Users of Roblox are all around the world, and all of them expect the same level of experience.
The success of games is measured by how much can you keep users engaged.
Zoroark's mission is all about player experience first. Everything we do, the player is sort of core to our thinking.
ここ数年で、リッチなユーザーエクスペリエンスを提供するために
If you don't want to worry and you don't want to think about things like asset delivery and the ability to have your connectivity between your devices and your servers as fast as you can, just go with Akamai.
Akamai gets into places and markets that other providers of similar services don't quite hit as easily.
その上で、アカマイさんのシステムを使うことで、大容量のセットを高速に配信させて、いただけてるかなと思います。
The workflow without that, I'd probably have a lot more CDN support because the amount of capacity we'd need from the others wouldn't be there. There's one less problem we have to solve.
If Akamai wasn't around, we would probably have to multiply our team by I don't know what kind of factor and understand what we would need to do to replace what Akamai provides to us.
Hello and welcome to Republic of Games, brought to you by CNBCTV18.com and Akamai Technologies. I'm Ridu Bhandari. Today we are discussing Gaming 2.0, preparing for the next big frontier. Now, has COVID-19 opened up significant opportunities for the Indian gaming sector? What does it take to build a truly global gaming brand from India? How has player behavior changed during the pandemic? How can companies make player experiences far more engaging and far more safe and secure? What are the investment opportunities like in the gaming sector in India? Well, those are some of the big questions that we are hoping to answer here today. And I'm joined by a set of very eminent industry experts. Let me welcome them. Manish Agarwal, CEO of Nazara Technologies. Rajan Navani, Vice Chairman, Managing Director and CEO at Jet Synthesis. Saloni Sehgal, General Partner at Lumicai. Bhavin Pandya, CEO of Games 24/7. Saurabh Chopra, CEO at Ballebazi. And Jonathan Singer, Senior Industry Strategist, Gaming at Akamai Technologies. Welcome, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to have all of you here with us today on Republic of Games. Well, global gaming is a $149 billion industry. Certainly, it has seen a boost during the pandemic. So I'm going to perhaps begin by asking each of you for some of the insights that you've observed during the pandemic, especially as a lot of Indians have taken to gaming through successive lockdowns. We've been a little short of entertainment opportunities outside of our homes. Manish, if I may begin with you, Nazara has stakes in multiple sports and gaming companies. How big is the opportunity that COVID-19 has really offered to Indian gaming companies over the last 6 months?
If you look at gaming, it's been 10 years and I've been saying that gaming in India is going to be very big. And today, unfortunately, it needed a COVID for all of you to say that gaming is going to be very big, right? What is happening today in the country is there was a growth of the number of gamers, which has got accelerated. You would have 350, 400 million gamers in this country now. But what is interesting is the time spent on gaming has shot up. Acceptability of gaming among the social fabric has really happened. So parents have understood that screen is inevitable. Parents have understood that we need to really engage with our kids on gaming, because we can't really do an outdoor sports or something of that sort. So there is a lot of acceptance and understanding of what gaming really offers, and they're enjoying it. And as you rightly said, entertainment options, gaming is the cheapest form of entertainment option. It's free. You can download, you can play, you can have your dopamine really coming up, and then you can enjoy. And these habits, which are of hanging together with your family, with your friends, extended family, extended friends, is going to stay here. It's not going out. And that's where it is a very deep-seated habit which has been formed of social, almost social hanging, and games as a platform. That's what we are seeing all across.
All right. Also bringing in Rajan at this point. Rajan, in the middle of the pandemic, Jet Synthesis went on to raise capital worth 300 crore rupees. Was part of this fundraising really driven by the accelerated use of digital technologies during the pandemic, the accelerated gaming during the pandemic, or was this pre-planned? And what are some of the emerging trends that you are observing in Indian households as far as gaming is concerned?
Thanks, Mridu. I think it is kind of perfect time. I think the lockdown the world over has just accelerated digital engagement, like never before, and particularly things like gaming, where the time that you spend, is significantly higher. If you're ordering groceries, you're getting a cab, or you're doing something, you're spending limited amount of time on the data, on the digital side. But when it comes to gaming and, at times of lockdown, we found a large jump, right? I mean, across all our games, we saw the downloads increase by 40 to 60%. In some of our games, even the engagement went up as much as 100%. And this is already off a base where, people were spending, 35 to 40 minutes a day, spending significantly longer. So, I think as Manish also rightly said, it's a combination of 2 or 3 factors, massive digitalization, deep engagement, and the future, looking much brighter. So I think benchmarks that we expected to achieve in a say a 2 or 3 year time frame, we see them being achieved and accelerated to be getting done in 6 to 9 months. Right? So it made a natural choice for us to deepen our commitment to gaming, enhance our investment in this sector, and really see how we can become competitive, not only to a larger extent in India, but also take on a much larger global play in the gaming industry. So yeah, exciting times, and I think it's only going to get better from here.
Right, absolutely. It is only going to get better from here. Saloni, what has the COVID impact been on interactive entertainment? What are you observing with your portfolio companies? Also, give us some more insights into trends. Are more women taking to gaming in India because of the successive lockdowns? Are players mainly from urban centers, or due to the smartphone penetration in tier 2, tier 3 towns, even rural India? Are you finding more and more takers of gaming? Rajan just touched upon the average time spent and downloads as well. What other insights and new trends would you like to add to that?
You're on mute.
Yeah. I've tracked the industry for a while, and globally as well as in India. And as an industry, gaming has always been counter-cyclical. So every time you've had economic crisis, it has resulted and fueled gaming consumption across the board and engagement. Now, even though, and Manish and Rajan have all talked about it, I think in terms of the data, that's actually more interesting, is that the digital acceleration was that ISP providers actually saw an increase of 30 to 50% in data generation. There was a 150% increase in the number of home broadband connections in Q1. Now, that has obviously meant that gaming has been the large beneficiary for it. But in terms of demographic, what's more interesting, and there's a very interesting study that came out a couple of months back by ComScore, which had said that nearly 67% of the internet audience in India is playing games. And that is a phenomenal number. And that time spent is about 96 billion minutes, which is already up 50% from the previous month. And majority of that age group is 15 to 30 years of age, with nearly a 50-50 gender split. Now, those kind of trends and those kind of data points have been something that has been unprecedented in India previously. Now, in terms of demographics which are playing games, what's interesting is the rise of female gamers. In fact, in smartphone usage in India heavily skews towards men. So the demographic in any case is 70-30%. But even within that, 20% of all smartphone users, or 25% of all smartphone users, are now women who are choosing to game, and choosing to game quite actively. And across the board, whether it's been engagement, whether it's been downloads, there's been a 30 to 50% increase. There have been certain categories now, whether we call them social gaming, which have actually seen almost a 70% increase. And that can be seen by the impact of Ludo King, which is now topping the charts and is one of the top 5 most downloaded games across the world. And we're now seeing that acceleration happen at a time where app usage, game infrastructure, game monetization is converging in a way that none of us probably sitting here have ever seen before. And as the economy unlocks, our hypothesis is that levels of consumption and engagement will normalize, but they will still be at a much higher new normal than previously.
Interesting. And game monetization is something that I'm going to come to in just a bit. Let me also bring in Bhavin. Bhavin, give us a sense of what player preferences have been like over the last couple of months. Are real money games doing better, or is the focus more on fantasy games, fantasy sports? And again, while a number of users are taking to gaming right now, do you see this becoming the long-term trend, or is this a pandemic trend that we are seeing?
So thank you, Midhu, for having me on the show. So let me start by saying that a lot of people talk about how COVID has brought about this whole surge in gaming and the interest in gaming. But my view is slightly different. I think gaming has been on the up and up for some time now. Even before COVID, gaming was in the news, was making big waves in terms of the numbers, people taking on to play different kinds of games. And what has really happened due to COVID is that it has seen a sharp spike. And let me sort of speak a little bit about the real money games. So we're in the Games 24/7 does skill games for real money, mostly rummy and fantasy sports. And what we've seen is that a lot of the players that sort of when the lockdown started came on to play these games because they had a lot of time. And they were the people that always wanted to try it out but never actually did, and now they had this opportunity and the time to try it out. So a lot of those players came back. In fact, our reactivations were off the charts. Reactivations means players who sort of played and then went away for a long time and then now have suddenly come back again, right? But because these players were on the fringe, right, as things began to sink in that at certain points in time, this is not natural. You got to go back to work. You got to go back to sort of earning a livelihood, and that's where we saw that spike sort of came down again, in the sense that the engagement started to drop. People went back to doing other things that they needed to do, like work or earn their livelihood, etc. Right? So while we did see a large spike earlier on, we have seen sort of some of that dwindle as time has gone by, as the COVID time has sort of extended. Fantasy obviously has been slightly different because the IPL has come back after delayed, but also live action sports have come after a very long time. And so therefore there is right now a surge. We're seeing that a lot of players are sort of taking to that. But generally, I think what's really happening is that all kinds of people are getting introduced to gaming at very, very early ages. You have kids who in school learn their addition and subtraction through gaming now. And so as they grow older, even in their social circles, they sort of talk about games. If you're part of some gaming group, and then you're part of that circle. If you're playing some other games, and you're part of another circle. And I think gaming, therefore, is just becoming, as Manish mentioned, right, like a big part of our lives from age 3, 4, 5, right? And then as we grow older, we just take to different types and forms of games. But I think gaming in general is now here to stay and here to grow for a very long time.
Right. I want to take forward that fantasy sports insight that you just shared. In fact, fantasy sports have seen a big boost in recent times. Even in the pre-COVID time, players have grown from about 2 million in 2017 to over 50 million in 2019 and expected to touch 100 million by the end of the year. So international sporting events, like Bhavin was saying, are now happening sans spectators. IPL is a case in point. Saurabh, if I can bring you in, how have you used this opportunity to make yourself a desirable gaming platform in these unprecedented times?
Thanks, Madhu. Thanks for having me. I would say, as my colleagues Bhavin and Manish have rightly pointed out, that gaming was always going through a surge in the last few years. What COVID has essentially done, I would use that analogy where what demonetization did to digital payments landscape in India, almost 4 years ago. COVID has done that to industries like gaming industry. We have seen a spike. We are seeing a spike in an already very fast-growing industry. Talking specifically about fantasy, fantasy is a part of the gaming industry which rather saw a rough patch for the first 4 months of lockdown with no sports happening. But it has come back well, very well, I would say indeed. With the onset of IPL, we are seeing these numbers go very, very high. What is also interesting, again, how Bhavin pointed out that the reactivations are very interesting. We see a lot of people who were one of the early adopters of our platform 2 years ago when we launched have come back. And very interesting to see that our retention for people who joined in 2 years ago is around 10%, which is never seen before. And even ongoing right now, we see the persistency metrics improving day by day. Very interesting time for fantasy, very interesting time for gaming in general.
Right. Okay. So let me come to you, Jonathan. You've heard some great insights, India-specific insights. I have two questions for you. One, most of us know Akamai Technologies as a global tech partner for sectors like OTT or publishing. Give us a sense of what you're doing in the gaming space, particularly in India. What are the opportunities you're seeing here? Two, you've heard some very great India-specific insights from the gaming arena. As far as global insights and mega trends are concerned, could you shed some light on those as well?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thank you again for having me. So Akamai is, of course, well known on the OTT side in India. But the reason we're here having this conversation in particular is because at a global level, we work with the world's largest platforms and games publishers. We deliver a lot of games traffic. And if I were to give a COVID-related example, we had earlier this year, a single customer on our platform host a large event and did an exabyte of traffic in 7 days. So that was big. That's about 10 at a medium-sized PC or console game download. That's about 10,250,000 games downloaded by from a single customer, in addition to everything else happening on our platform. So we're deeply embedded in the game space at a global level. And so that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this discussion. I think that there have been so many wonderful points made. And I think one of the things that I want to touch on is demographics and sort of the stickiness of gaming going forward. And that is, if you look at some research by Newzoo, they take into account the demographics of gamers and they look at them, and we're seeing a really even distribution amongst age range and also gender. And so if you were to look, and they break it out like 10 to 15 years old, 16 to 20, all the way across by 5-year increments, and it's about 10%, 10%, 10%, 10% of the world's gamers, and that's how it's broken down. So what COVID has done is reawakened people at all different ages to the fun we had as children, because obviously children are going to play games, and if video games are available, that's fantastic for them. And I think if you look at the nostalgia factor, if you look at something like in India, people going in and the popularity of something like Ludo King and a lot of those older games, it's like, oh wow, like, yeah, I really used to enjoy this, and I still do, right? And that sort of changing mindset about playing something in front of a screen, it's a different way to engage with your community. It's a different way to engage with a game. And I think that it's really going to make the popularity of it kind of stick. And you can see, an interesting bellwether for global sort of perception of games as an industry is the complete 180 that the World Health Organization did, right? So in 2019, they classified gaming disorder as an illness. And this year they supported the games industry's Play a Part Together campaign. And they said, yeah, like you should play video games. It's great for social distancing. You can maintain ties with your community, have fun, and stay at home, right? So there's really a kind of sea change in attitudes. Are we always going to see the massive spikes? I mean, yes, I think they will get bigger as more and more people enter the games industry. Will each individual person be playing as many games as they are during a pandemic? Probably not, but people are still gonna, that's something that they're now gonna pick up their phone and say like, yeah, I'm gonna check in and play this game with my friends. So that's the sort of thing that we're seeing at this point.
Okay, so Jonathan, fairly optimistic there about changing consumer behavior. Saloni, you want to chime in on that? How sticky is this consumer behavior of wanting to get into gaming during the time that we are still in the pandemic, in a post-pandemic world? Are these habits going to change? Saloni, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think the digital acceleration that we are seeing is there's no going back from it. People who've taken on SIM cards or who've taken on broadband connections aren't going to suddenly disconnect them because, well, now they're back to work. And that level of, engagement that we're seeing currently will probably taper off, but it's going to be new normals. And we've seen that previously. We saw this in the 2009 crisis. There was economic crisis, massive unemployment, games engagement spiked. And then when, economies restored, people started going back to work, but still mobile gaming was at an all-time high. And there were consumption levels which were at a new normal. I think what's more important to understand is how Indian gamer behavior is very different from that of the Western gamer. Their user behavior is very different. Western gamers have gone through a evolution. They were, they started from being arcade gamers, then they became PC gamers, then console, and then mobile. They saw different business models. They saw box games, they saw paid games, they saw free-to-play, freemium subscription. Indian gamers, now they're largely first-time mobile gamers. They're also largely first-time smartphone users. And they are now being exposed to everything from social media, chat, video games, audio messaging, all at the very same time. So that's a very complex digital sociology. They're on one hand, very sophisticated, and on the other hand, they're very primitive. They're sophisticated because they're playing mid-core battle royale games, but at the same time, they are first time enjoying the pleasure of playing casual games on platforms and staking money on it. So it's a very complex digital sociology to unpack and build games for. And that's what makes this a fantastic time and opportunity. It's a really golden age for game content developers in the country.
Right. And talking of opportunities, geopolitical tensions have also opened up certain opportunities in the recent times. Manish, recent tensions with China led the Indian government to ban certain popular Chinese gaming apps like PUBG or Rise of Kingdoms, etc. What kind of opportunities does a move like that open up for wholly indigenous Indian gaming brands, and how has it impacted esports and influencer ecosystems at large? And what are you seeing on the investment side, the investments into gaming?
So I think 2-3 questions which you asked. I believe Indian gaming ecosystem is still very nascent. Just to pick up from where Saloni left was that we are maybe a 10-year-old gaming industry where your ability to really create a large supply pool of talent is still very low. For you to really create a high quality AAA world class kind of games, which are mobile battle arena games or MMORPGs. So we have still many miles to go before we could really say that we will be able to have a great game design supply pool in India, which could really compete with the games which we see and we talk about, the foreign import games which we see here on our Google Play Store. I think what has really happened is establishment of companies like Zynga, Glue, EA, Tencent here in India has created a lot of training of the local supply pool, which will really come out and spur Indian gaming companies to start thinking that grammar of building. And I think that is really missing because we do not have a formal education system. We don't have a formal curriculum. We don't have trainers to even train that. And that learning can only happen on the job. So to your question, that how is that impacted? In my opinion, while I understand the sentiment, we need to have more and more gaming companies really coming in India and setting up their shop so that we can learn from there, right? So that's really important from an ecosystem point of view. We have a very inherent great talent. Molding them can really produce the global gaming companies from India. Another thing which is important is you can have build in India for India and build in India for globe. And the beauty of our market is, given that we are such a large market with millennials and Gen Zs and our per capita income increasing and gaming becoming really social community, I believe that even if you are able to create a right kind of content for local population, you really don't have to worry about the global, because you are not sitting in Finland or Korea or Lithuania or Estonia, where your domestic market doesn't exist. We have such a large domestic market here that if you are able to create a great game, you would be able to make a lot of user base, a lot of things. Esports typically, I believe, is going to really disrupt the way millennials and Gen Zs really watch sports. And we were watching cricket, test match, then T20 happened. Now, if you look at the mobile games, that outcome comes in 15 to 20 minutes. It's the unpredictability of the outcome which comes so fast, gives me huge amount of thrill, which leads to me conversing with my friends and forming a really great entertainment. And I think that is what is going to disrupt. The underlying games can change because it's all about large community which a particular game can command. It could be a PUBG today, it could be Free Fire tomorrow, it could be a virtual cricket game, or it could be any other game. But esports, as a long direction, is going to really disrupt the way sports we have seen, and in terms of media, in terms of brand sponsorships, as well as viewers.
Right. Saloni, you want to quickly add an investor perspective to that, geopolitics impacting investments, impacting the gaming ecosystem in India?
Yeah, I totally agree with Manish on this. The market is through an inflection point, and we've seen these similar inflection points be very beneficial for other markets. We've seen this in Turkey, and we saw this in China. In the early 2000s, 60% of the revenues in the gaming industry came from foreign titles, actually. It was South Korean and Taiwanese titles. Legend of Mir was a South Korean title, which was the top grossing charts for in the early 2000s. And there were similar of these inflection points. Introduction of 3G, broadband penetration, increasing number of game development studios. A couple of game development studios went public, Giant, Perfect World, they went public at that point of time. Lot more rise of nationalism with governments encouraging employment in gaming, the government's users saying that they want to consume Chinese content. And all of that actually went into then studios developing China-specific content. So Pan Asia Games launched a multiplayer role-player game. NetEase launched Fantasy Westward Journey, and now the industry is where it is. So there are very similar inflection points now. Obviously, the trajectory will not be the same, but there's similar inflection points that we're seeing, and we're already seeing greater investor capital. There's already been $500 million of games invested in the last 3 to 4 years. Majority of it has come in the last 2 years, and all of that acts as a catalyzer towards boosting game development.
Right, fair enough. Okay, so the primary reason for the ban cited by the Indian government was lack of data privacy and exposure to increasing cyber attacks. Bhavin and Saurabh, can I get quick insights from both of you on what Indian developers and entrepreneurs are really doing to keep pace with the rising fraud and cyber attacks in the gaming space? Especially with respect to real money games, you not just have personal data of players on your platforms, you also have financial data riding there. So, Bhavin, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Midhu. So you're absolutely right that when it comes to real money gaming, you have to obviously protect your player privacy, data, etc. And there is a lot that you have to do here to be on top of this. For us, the way we do it is we obviously build our own security layer, but that is on top of what we host on AWS on the cloud and what AWS already provides. So they obviously have their robust security layer, but we build one on top. Therefore, not only is access to our systems very, very stringent, but even within the org, we make absolutely sure that most people don't have access to any of this, including myself. But the big thing that one has to constantly watch out for is detect patterns in fraud, right? Once you see that a particular type of fraud is happening, then you have to sort of make sure that you sort of prevent that going forward. But the fraudster is smart. He's going to come back with something else, right? The way we stay on top of this is obviously through a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence, which we use to constantly detect patterns and make sure that any event that is sort of an anomaly is quickly flagged, and then we stop usage, stop that player from using our system, and so on and so forth. But primarily, it is just constantly being very vigilant and building at least 2 or 3 security layers to ensure that the systems are impenetrable.
All right, Saurabh, you want to add on to that?
Definitely. Again, rightly pointed out by Bhavin, I would say, we are in the real money gaming industry, and it becomes even more important to ensure that while data security is a top priority, data privacy is also a very important aspect to be catered to. When we ensure that, whenever we have our technological reviews and we ensure that we are making progress in both the sectors. See, security is an ever-evolving process. Fraudsters will always try and remain ahead of the game, and that's what they're there for do. But I would say in the last 6 months or 8 months, we have seen a surge in also some malicious activities that have happened across the ecosystem. There are a lot of things out there in the news. And like we have cloud infrastructures in place, which provide us a lot of data security. But we are trying to dig deep into data, mine, understand patterns. We even gone ahead and even bring out things like Benford's law, for that matter, to understand what are the natural gaming patterns of users and whether the patterns that we see are aligned with the Benford's law or not, which is very interesting to see and understand and how it can really benefit to understand that you're able to understand some fraudulent patterns coming out of it and you take the appropriate action against it. So it's an ever iterative process with a fast emerging landscape also comes technical challenges. And I think so far so good. The whole industry has been able to keep up with it.
Right. Jonathan, you want to give us a broad sense of how serious this problem of fraud and cyber attacks is in the gaming industry in particular? What are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing around the world in terms of the frequency of these malicious attacks, in terms of sophistication and how organized they really are? And on the solution front, what can gaming companies in India really do to up their game on the security front?
Absolutely. So first, we actually just published a State of the Internet Security report because we have a massive threat research and threat intelligence team here at Akamai. And we saw, and we've been tracking this for a couple of years now. So over the last 2 years, we've seen over 10 billion credential stuffing attacks against the games industry. We saw over 150 million web attacks. We've seen a massive number in DDoS attacks, both large complex DDoS attacks and smaller nuisance attacks. It makes gaming one of the most attacked industries that's out there, rivaling financial services in a lot of ways. And that's because gaming is, one of the world's one of the largest completely unregulated financial markets. If you look at it that way, people put a lot of time and money into their games. And the threat since COVID-19 we've really seen a spike. And I think that to everyone's points, you need to really understand how sophisticated the criminals are that are targeting this industry. And the point is that if you were to go and sort of examine what's happening on the dark web and how they operate, it's shockingly similar to how your enterprise runs. They have enterprise operations. They do DevOps. They will, they'll have someone who will develop an attack, be it, say, a bot. They'll develop it, they'll QA it, they'll have someone market it, they'll sell it, it'll go into launch, and then, excuse me, I have a very strange, my phone is giving me an issue here. They'll go and they'll launch this, and then they'll take feature requests, and they'll put those into production. So it's really like exactly what you'd see from standard enterprise operations. So the criminals that are targeting this industry have this level of sophistication, and they know how to get in, they know how to get money out of your players, and they're targeting the most vulnerable players. And to a point made earlier, a lot of folks in India, this is all new to them. All of this ecosystem is relatively new in a lot of ways. And so, you've got to think about who are your most vulnerable folks. Are they seeing, phishing texts? Are they seeing phishing emails? Can they recognize those things? Because you, as the CEO of a company, might be like, oh, well, I see that. But the reason these get sent out is because they work. All of these attacks work. They work on a regular basis. They make a lot of money. So the things that you really want to focus on are like, what are the simple things we can do around authentication? What can we put in front of our cloud services to protect us against bots and all the different things that they do? So there's a lot of different layers to security that you really need to add in order to make sure that you're making it as difficult as possible for criminals to get in and access your player base and your money, because no one's going to have 100% perfect security, but the harder you make it, the more that criminals will kind of pass up your players and move on to sort of easier targets.
Right. All right. So security is definitely one important aspect of building a world-class gaming brand. Let's talk about, what will it really take for an Indian company to capture significant share of world markets, whether it's in emerging markets or developed markets. Rajan, scale, of course, is a function of the viability of the business model and the liquidity that's available. What are the monetization options for different genres of gaming, especially as mobile gaming really, really takes off in India? And are Indians really ready as consumers to pay for superlative gaming experiences?
It's an interesting question because if you see, Chinese companies and many of the, other larger companies in the world, when they were looking at the future of gaming and, the industry, I think, the large consumer base of India combined with the deep monetization of the West and many other countries that contribute, to that $150 billion gaming industry was a perfect recipe, for getting, valued higher, for being able to showcase that, a company is in a position to be able to capitalize on the future. And I think all of those aspects really hold true. So, being able to capture a market in India, which is enabling not only more downloads and engagement, but higher levels of monetization, albeit from a very low base, right? The Indian industry is still sub $1 billion. So if we look at the catch-up potential, is massive. So I think the ability for Indians to start paying, and we are seeing that trend happening significantly already. The government and others also looking at this as an industry that will continue to grow and scale in the future. We were talking of becoming part of global supply chains. Indian studios really investing further, and we are definitely doing that in global talent, in creating titles that will compete not only in India but also globally, are all trends that have already started to take shape and are getting deep rooted now in India. And moving from the entire experience of casual gaming on mobile to being able to view and become a part of the esports spectate industry, I think is a massive transition where across the ecosystem, right? I think there are so many opportunities for Indian companies to kind of grow and scale. And of course, we are definitely, like what you mentioned in the beginning, investing deeply to do that. As a matter of fact, 3 days ago, we announced an acquisition of a large community in the cricket space in India, to kind of strengthen and grow that space. At the same time, we are growing, certain titles in the US and in European markets. So I think this perfect kind of combination is what is now enabling Indian companies to do a lot better. There's still a lot of catch up. There's still a lot of headroom for being able to close that gap. But it's a very interesting time to be able to do so.
Absolutely. Well, very interesting times indeed for the gaming industry. Bhavin, you want to chime in on that? Is the Indian consumer ready to pay for a superlative gaming experience or not?
So thank you for that question. So what we have seen, at least at Games 24/7, and while we have primarily been in the real money skill game space, we've also launched, we have an ultimate game studio where we've launched casual games for the Indian market, right? And they're slightly different from the games that are popular right now in India, the PUBGs, etc., the competitive, fight with one another, kill one another kind of games. And those, I think, work really well because they automatically translate into esports, which I also agree with a lot of the eminent folks here say that it will become big, that I think it'll do really well in India. But you take the core casual game, right? The games that have really monetized well in the West, right? In India, those have not monetized as well. And I think that's because still deep rooted in our psyche is to look for discounts, to look for free things, to sort of say that if I can get this entertainment for free, why should I really pay for it, right? And we see a lot of that playing out, at least in very casual games here in India. And so what we're actually going to do is we're going to build a game for the international market, for the US market, and launch there very shortly, a casual game, right? A game that's popular amongst the middle-aged American woman, really, which is the highest monetizer there in the West. So those are some of the things, at least, that we're seeing, that while globally there is still a lot of opportunity to do core casual games, like real social casual games. In India, that's sort of some ways away in our view.
All right, and let me also bring up our first audience question. I'm going to request all our virtual audience joining us here today to go ahead and ask questions to our eminent panelists. We are talking about the future of the Indian gaming industry, and I have my first audience question here. This one is from Sumit Rastogi, and he asks, how to promote esports in vernacular languages in India? Saurabh, do you want to take that? How to promote esports in vernacular languages? India is a country of many countries. We have diverse cultures, diverse languages, opportunities out there for gaming folks.
Definitely. See, India. I mean, India is a country many say should be called United States of India because it's actually a country with a lot of mini countries of sorts, so many languages, so many cultures. So it becomes ever more important to understand the impact of vernacular marketing in India and even vernacular content if you're talking about a platform. The world is looking at India. While circling back to your previous question, understanding global ecosystem is important, but for the Indian studios, primarily to start with focusing on India will fetch better ROIs. It's also important to understand that India is a market which is now evolving into more paying users. Today we are sitting at a time where someone like my father, who's a 60-year-old man, would not really pay, who loves playing rummy for that matter, but wouldn't go really online and spend that money to play an RMG rummy app, right? That's largely because he's not a digital native. I would assume it's a fair assumption that it will not be true, let's say 10 years or 20 years from now when we'll be in our 50s and 60s. So I was just trying to answer that part of it from your previous question, that I think rather we focus on the Indian ecosystem. And then now coming to your question now, very important to understand what your game is, what your product is, what is the TG. If I talk about RMG, we all have seen, and Bhavan can tell you better, that how the southern hemisphere of India has been more dominant in the rummy sector. In fantasy, I would rather say it's pretty uniform. It's cricket, it's India. When you go into different sections of games, someone talked about hyper casual games which do very well in monetization globally. The Talking Toms of India. Manish can point out how his studio has been working on some similar games. Those are the games which we need to focus on in India. We can devise strategies to build the right content, focusing on the right states, whether it is Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, Punjabi, so on and so forth. I think as the time is evolving and the very nascent Indian marketing ecosystem is evolving, we are understanding the impact. We are understanding how regional strategies for product and marketing alike help benefit in multiple ways, and that is the way ahead.
Right, Manish, you want to weigh in on that as well? Games made in India by Indians for Indians.
Yeah.
Big opportunity there.
I think before that, I would just want to correct something on esports, since your question was on esports. There is a lot of kind of misconception on anything which is played on mobile in gaming is called esports. No, that's not correct. There's a lot of misconception around that you run tournaments and you participate on tournaments around casual games or around anything, and then you can call it esports. No, that is also not right. Esports is a very simple definition. It's like any other sports. You play cricket, you play soccer, you play kabaddi, you play basketball. Here you are kind of participating in a tournament, which is professional players who are really good, who are athletes, and they are participating, and their skill is and their strategy is so great that there are millions of people watch them on their mobile devices and on their laptops, and that's what is esports. So on that perspective, that kind of awareness and education is required, and by all of us in the industry, to really create right definition so that we really kind of not get confused on our terminology. The second thing which is important is that, as to your question, we have seen tremendous amount of growth in the consumers watching a live stream being commentated in Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, English. We have seen this year itself, year and a half back, we started Hindi. This year we started Tamil Telugu, and our concurrency of the viewership, like all of us have concurrency on Hotstar for IPL, we also have concurrency for people watching other people playing PUBG games or Free Fire games and all that stuff. A concurrency for Tamil Telugu is as high as Hindi, and that creates a massive amount of opportunity. That you have multiple lingual young audience, very tech savvy, and which are continuously playing these games on their mobile phones. So that is where the esports opportunity is very big. And to Rajan's point, you are not talking about casual users, you're talking about more mid-core, hardcore gamers, where their propensity to pay is higher, their um, need for paying is much higher because it's a demand which they have to be accepted in their peer pressure, or they like to just hang around. So that's where the revenue opportunity is very big, and esports is very symbiotic in that extent. And to the point of making games for India, you need to be very clear what are you looking for. If you're making a casual or a hyper casual game, really it needs to be very high virality, because there is no business model which you can really create in India that I will make so much of revenue and I'll be able to acquire users by paying for that. No, you cannot do that. You need to really have very strong word of mouth, very strong user referral system happening there. And if you're able to achieve that with good retention, you are home. But if you're not able to do that, then I would say follow what Bhavin is doing, make a casual game in India for US. What we used to call in gaming, the audience which he's going after is Big Fish. Big Fish was a company which went to middle-aged American housewives, very high ARPU. You find them, you figure out your LTV CAC equations, and then do that. So if you are an Indian company trying to do casual game in India, you really have to be in top 1 percentile of virality and retention. Otherwise, you will have a difficult time. However, since the large audience base of mid-core, hardcore users have started happening in India, you could really think of making a very strong, very good, deep game for them. And over a period of time, that is how the Indian content will start coming and making money for India is what is going to really happen.
Right. Very, very interesting insights there, Manish. Saloni, talking about scale and really building that brand from India. Lumikai, of course, funds a lot of unique gaming companies. Give us a few tips on what you look for in entrepreneurs and their ideas as far as gaming is concerned. How do you know that this is a scalable idea? And are we far too dependent on global behemoths and platform companies when it comes to scale?
Yeah, so to build a global gaming company, capital is only one part of the puzzle. And too often investors feel that you fuel capital in a gaming company and then it's going to become like the next king or the next supercell. There are many more other aspects. There are aspects, the need to access talent, the need for accessing the right game design talent, the right live ops talent, user analytics, data scientists. Game development and game creation is as much a science as it is art. And founders need to be prepared for that journey. And there are also a lot of myths when it comes to investing in game development. A lot of people look at game development and feel like it's like the same as investing in consumer internet. It's not the case. A lot of investors look at game development and use the problem solution framework, which unfortunately, when it comes to entertainment products, breaks down, because does the world need yet another match 3 game? Probably not. But does that mean that another match 3 game cannot be a breakout success? Probably yes. So, there are a lot of myths around games investing as well, which need to change if it comes to backing founders. Also, founders need to figure out what is the audience and what is the white space that needs to be built for. There are a lot of genres out there which still can be disrupted, and founders need to find those white spaces, whether it is going after female focused games, whether it is going after social multiplayer games within certain categories of casual. The industry is broad and deep enough to create multiple market leaders, but it requires the right kind of mentality. And founders, particularly, I think there are a few things that we've noticed in founders in India, particularly. Founders find it easier to build platforms than content, which puzzles us. There are a lot of people and a lot of very talented teams going after the platform plays that unfortunately is a zero-sum game, because at the end of the day, there are going to be only 1 or 2 platforms that are going to exist, whereas content, on the other hand, has the opportunity to create multiple market leaders. It is also tougher to innovate and build on that, but there is opportunity to do so. I think Indian developers so far have been quite hamstrung with just the lack of risk capital. So that means that they've either had to go after low-hanging fruit, or having had to build games which have require publishing, and they've been hesitant to self-publish. Also, to some extent, they don't have that inherent capability to do user acquisition, to do that analytics and that LTV CAC expertise that Manish was also talking about. And all of that is something that Lumika is now wanting to change, and wanting to change not just with our expertise, but also with the expertise of our global investor base, who are large media and gaming companies from across the world. I think most important to game development is the founder's ability to stomach risk. It is a iterative process. It requires failure. You're going to make games, you're going to kill games, you're going to experiment, and then you're going to try again, all of it, and you're going to do this all again. And that mentality is super difficult, and we don't see that enough. You'll have founders who are going to go down the path of a particular genre and then suddenly pivot midway to another genre which requires totally different expertise. And so I think, as the cycle it's early in game development, but it's the right time. It's the market's at an inflection point, and the ingredients are all there. There's now a lot more capital and liquidity into the system, which should now enable game devs. And now is just a market for us to lose, frankly.
Right. Okay. Let me also ask Rajan here. We are talking about scaling up and monetization strategies beyond in-app purchases and advertisements. What are some of the new revenue models evolving for gaming companies? And as you look into the future in the post-pandemic world, what sort of monetization strategies are most of you looking at?
So, I think in-app purchases does remain, at a global level, also one of the key drivers of monetization in gaming. But, brand participation alongside, the advertising that happens is also increasing, right? Because as you find, select communities getting deeper engagement on these platforms, there's a global kind of an understanding around, sponsorships and all of that actually driving to reach that consumer base. So I think this entire growth in digital has definitely opened up the complete value proposition for something like this, and we've seen that some of our games, like we have a game with Sachin Tendulkar, where you have a premium influencer, icon and celebrity also participating, in the game, where you play like him and you do like that. Brand engagement on opportunities like that are much higher, right? Because in a way, you're able to find ways in which you can engage with audiences also on values, right? I think the kinds of games people play, the kind of engagement that they have, all of that kind of stand out. So we see that as one specific area that seems to be moving a lot. We're also seeing subscription, where you have long-term gamers, as I said, there is a lot of engagement that is going on to increase. And, to Saloni's point also, that the content that you kind of create lasts for several years, maybe if not longer. As a matter of fact, the community only grows and strengthens when you're able to create a hit and a success. And, the success can then move, and Angry Birds is a great example, I always say, where it's a light casual game, but then there's a movie made, there's merchandise done, and multiple things that came out of a strong, franchise of a strong game, right? I see that happening in India. I see that happening, with Indian studios and Indian companies making it happen on a global scale. And I think all of that presents a very interesting opportunity for where gaming can go. But the funnel, casual to mid-core to the core gamer, creating a professional sports player in that specific game, to what Manish said earlier, the true understanding of what esport is, where a person like from India can win an Olympic medal is truly exciting, right? And that again throws up tremendous amount of opportunities where a professional esport player can, endorse brands and make millions of dollars himself or herself. And I think that opportunity is what we are seeing, unlocked in India. So if I again go back to right from the gamer at the core to, everybody else who is involved in this process of the gaming industry, there are multiple ways in which, wealth and monetization can get created in the years to come.
Interesting. Jonathan, You've partnered with some Indian gaming companies and with many around the world. Share some global best practices with us when it comes to making a truly scalable brand. How do you look at monetization opportunities in India? And really, what is the Akamai edge when it comes to gaming?
Sure. So the first thing that I want to say is when we talk about monetization, obviously free to play at a global level is a $25 billion market in of itself. And as other folks have said, microtransactions are sort of the way to go. And I think that one of the ways you want to rebrand it to yourself is you're not thinking about free to play, but you're thinking about want to pay. So you want to, and this is the opportunity that new companies in India have, and existing companies, is to tap into their knowledge of the United States of India, right? And to really understand your player base, and from there you can sort of capture those things. Because if you look at some of the recent games that have sort of captured attention sort of in the West, games like Fall Guys by Mediatonic, they've been around for 20 years as a studio, helping build other publishers' games. And suddenly they are like, hey, remember Takeshi's Castle, this crazy Japanese game show? Let's turn that into a game. And everyone's like, oh, that's really fun. And another game, Among Us, is basically Werewolf, which is an old party game that you'd all sit around with a drink and you'd try to figure out who's the werewolf among you, right? So it's, that sort of knowledge of your own market and of your own massive number of people who live there. Like that's really one of the keys to success, is just being yourself. So that's one thing. And then the next thing when it comes to scaling is obviously, you need to take risks, but you also need to have the technology partners that can really scale. And that's both in India. If you look at sort of, if you're comparing CDNs and you look at super pop architecture versus you look at someone with a distributed architecture like Akamai, right? We're in all the tier 2 cities. We're in all the tier 3 cities. We've got that sort of that penetration from having to deliver, OTT services. So, you want the partners that really can help you in the markets that you want to be in, right? And so that goes back to your research. Is like, who are the demographics? Where's the market? Am I targeting this segment with this type of game, and do I have the infrastructure in place to reach those people specifically? And then on top of it, can I secure that? So those are the sorts of things that you really want to focus on when you're looking to scale up. And then if you want to scale globally, again, you need someone who can just flip the switch and turn it on and help you, and has experience doing that with the largest companies in the world.
Right. Fantastic. Well, we are running out of time on this special conversation, so I'm going to give 30 seconds to each one of you to tell me that as a stakeholder of the gaming industry, what is the next big frontier that you are looking to conquer? Saurabh, maybe we can begin with you. Please unmute yourself, Saurabh.
Yeah, sorry for that. So, saying from the fantasy sports standpoint, I mean, the next 24 months are as interesting as they can be. We have 2 World Cups, we have 2 IPLs, 2 IPLs just in a span of 6 months, rather, assuming the next IPL is on time. So the whole focus is there. We are in a very interesting time, and we are trying to build our scalability technologies, our data mining infrastructures on point.
All right, Bhavin, what about you? Next big frontier for you?
For us, it's undoubtedly, leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence to build hyper-personalized experiences, right? We talk about providing awesome gameplay experiences to our players, but my awesome is different from your awesome. And how do I make your awesome awesome for you and the same for me, right? To really customize the experiences that you have. So you're engaged with our platform, with our games, you keep coming back, and then someone else like myself who has very different tastes from you also gets the same kind of experience to cater to my needs. So yes, leveraging technology to really build awesome gameplay experiences for our players.
Right. Okay, Manish, what about you?
We'll have 2 of them. One is in India, just to establish esports as the biggest one after cricket, and create a massive amount of viewer base on esports in India. That's one. Second is gamified learning for the 2 to 7-year-olds. That space is pretty vacant. Screen is inevitable, as all of us know, who have young kids. And we all need very safe, good quality edutainment content and we want to build a global brand out of India in that space, because that space is very homogeneous. So kind of disrupt these two big white spaces, if I may call them.
All right, Rajan, next big frontier for you.
A little similar to what Mani said, but really strengthen our domestic play, both around, cricket as well as esport and many other local genres that are working well. And at the same time, see how we can create, great opportunities globally. We are in the process of releasing some great titles that we hope will do very well in the global market. And second is really, with the onset of 5G and, the entire immersive experience using VR, AR, mixed reality, as well as personalization and many other aspects that technology will drive to create deeper experiences for gamers and that consumer industry, I think is something we're very excited about.
All right. Saloni?
Yeah, I think
actually I have a different question for you. What should the next big frontier be for entrepreneurs in the gaming space?
so. Three major areas of interest for us. One is original IP. Indian storytelling is now coming of age. There is a massive opportunity to build these original gaming contextual experiences, which can become transmedia IP. We're seeing the beginning of that. Less than 13% of the top 50 grossing titles are apps which cater to the Indian audience. So that needs to change. So that's an area of interest. Games catering to new demographics, whether it's female audiences, whether it's white spaces, both globally and locally. That's definitely very interesting. Ludo King has unlocked a social audience and a social multiplayer audience by leveraging very familiar mechanics. We'd like to see more of that. And then regional language gaming experiences. We talked about it a little bit, but Tamil users are the fastest growing category of regional players, which were playing PUBG. 90% of all video consumption on YouTube happens in local languages. And there's definitely a need for gaming experience. There's a lot of demand, there's very little supply.
Right. Jonathan, final word to you. Next big frontier for the Indian gaming community.
Okay, I've got two. I've got the Akamai view and my personal view. So the Akamai view is we're really excited to see the next big frontier as far as just the expansion of the Indian market and the technical challenges that they're going to have to overcome, because we are a company of engineers and we love helping people solve incredibly difficult technical challenges. And gaming just is a cutting edge art and science, and we love to help the biggest players in the world, and we love to help the folks in India solve their challenges. So that's one. But from a personal note, I play games for the story. And so to what Salani said, I am really excited to see the stories that come out of India based on local mythology and your own brand of storytelling. We see a lot of stories from the West. We see a lot of stories from East Asia. I want to see more from India. I'm so excited for it. Raji an ancient epic just came out for Nintendo Switch, and I want more. So I'm excited to see the success of everyone who's on this panel, of everyone who's watching this panel. I want more. So I'm very excited.
Well, indeed, very, very exciting times ahead. Gentlemen and Saloni, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to all of you about Gaming 2.0 and the next big frontier. Well, thank you very much for taking out time and being with us here on Republic of Games. Appreciate you joining us. News and updates continue on cnbctv18.com and all Network 18 platforms. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.
Users of Roblox are all around the world, and all of them expect the same level of experience.
Well, the success of games is measured by how much can you keep users engaged.
So Red's mission is all about player experience first. Everything we do, the player is sort of core to our thinking.
ここ数年で、リッチなユーザーエクスペリエンスを提供するために
If you don't want to worry and you don't want to think about things like asset delivery and the ability to have your connectivity between your devices and your servers as fast as you can, just go with Akamai.
Akamai gets into places and markets that other providers of similar services don't quite hit as easily.
その上で、アカマイさんのシステムを使うことで、大容量のセットを高速に配信させて、いただけているかなと思います。
The workflow without that, I'd probably have a lot more CDN support because the amount of capacity we'd need from the others wouldn't be there. There's one less problem we have to solve.
If Akamai wasn't around, we would probably have to multiply our team by I don't know what kind of factor and understand what we would need to do to replace what Akamai provides to us.